Welcome back to another video here on Free Will Photos. Today we're going to do a quick edit of this mossy looking image. Now for me this looks like a cinematic scene, so I want to go with that in mind when I'm editing. Also enjoy the deep shadows that are surrounding the areas that are lit up, so I want to highlight that as well in the image. And because of that, I don't think Brilliance AI is going to know that that's what I want to do. So for my global edits, I'm just going to go ahead and pull down on the exposure, and that's going to darken everything, which I'm okay with. And then I'm just going to push up on my highlights. It's going to take the brightest areas, or the areas that are a little bit brighter, and it's going to increase them. Now, this has a very minor impact on the image right now. So I'm also going to push up on my midtones, and you can see how that's just kind of bringing back some of the life in the image. And then I'm going to pull down on my shadows. Again, this is because I want to accentuate the brighter areas right through here. And I'm only doing this globally right now. I'm going to go and do some local adjustments here in a little while. And then what I also want to do is kind of turn up the volume on the colors. And the way that I like to do this is push the vibrance just a little bit. This is going to take those colors that aren't quite saturated and add in a little bit more saturation, but leave the other colors that are more saturated alone. All right. Vibrance is a great way of just bringing a touch of color into the image without like making the image overly saturated. So here is the image we came in with, and here's what we're going to go into the local adjustment section with. It's not very, it's not a huge transformation overall, but let's jump into local and make this a little bit more cinematic. So we're going to go ahead and add an adjustment. And the very first thing I want to do is just brighten up this center section. So we'll double click that to close it or to reset it. And I'm going to increase the exposure here. I'm going to hit M on the keyboard. This is going to give me my masking bug. And then I'm just going to click right here in the center. Now, the way that I'm going to increase the exposure is by using a reflected gradient. You can access that by coming up to the shape tool and then down at the very bottom, selecting reflected gradient. This allows me to reposition the light only down the center area, and you get these two linear gradients, if you will, that you can reshape wherever you want them to be. So again, I want this to be right down the center. So I'm just going to reshape them to fit that narrative for me. And then I could fade this off just like a normal linear gradient. The reflected gradient is an awesome tool to use. I do recommend everyone give it a shot if you are not familiar with the tool. And if you don't like it, you can just delete it. It's perfectly fine. So let's go ahead and turn this off, turn it back on. And right now I'm actually getting the inverse effect. It's brightening the outside areas and not the center. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on my mask and hit invert mask. And now I'm getting the impact that I want, or the effect that I want, right down the center. So let's go ahead and pull this. Maybe we'll expose it a little bit more, right? We'll increase the highlights. Let's see what contrast does. Nah, I don't like contrast. So we'll just go ahead and reset that by double clicking. And then I'm going to add in some structure. So one of the main things, and this is just standard across all photo editing techniques, wherever you want people to look in the photo, you need to increase the exposure or make it a little bit brighter, and then also make it a little bit more structured or clear. So that way the viewer knows this is where my eye should be. All right. So now that I have this looking the way that I want it to, at least for now with the light, it's time to kind of start playing with the color. In fact, I think I want to make the darker areas a little bit darker. So let's go ahead and rename this. We'll just call this Center Bright. You can rename this whatever you want, as long as it makes sense to you. And then I'm going to take this mask, right click on it. I'm going to copy it. I'm just going to paste it up here because I don't want to redo all the work. Not that this was hard to do. We'll invert it. And now you can see it's darkened down those other areas. Now that's a little too dark because I don't want to lose all of the detail. I'm a huge fan of not having detail where I don't really care for the viewer to look because I don't want them spending time looking there. But I also want them to know that there is something here and it's just in shadow, but the attention I want to go here. All right. So hopefully this is just making that little area darker. Hopefully it's coming through on the YouTube compression, but the idea is just to make this a little bit darker, but there's still some details that are coming through on the image here in the shadowed areas. All right. And then we'll just relabel this darker shadows there. All right. So those are the only local adjustments that I really need to craft the light the way that I want, at least for now. All right. I can always come back and add more local adjustments if necessary. Now it's time to move into the effects. And this is where you start to style an image. And you can do this in one of two ways. All right. The first way is I can manually come over here, hit add filter, go through all of these and add filters, and then style the image the way that I want. And I'll probably do a little bit of that. But ON1 does come with cinema presets, and these are actually pretty good. All right. The idea here is to get close to what I want or get an idea and then start to tailor around that. So let's go ahead and just hover over these and you'll see it adds it to the image. Now, this looks kind of otherworldly, not quite what I'm going for. This looks very ethereal, also not what I'm going for. So I'm just going to kind of browse through these. Now, in the event that you say, you know what, I don't want to just look over each one. I kind of want to see all of them side by side. If you come up here, and this is true to pretty much all of the presets, after you've clicked a category, you can click on this little 4 squared box, and it's going to give you this pop-up. And now you can kind of see all of these presets side by side. Sometimes these are a little too small. So what you can do is just come down here to the bottom and increase the size. So that way you can see it a little bit better on your image, or you can see the preview a little bit better. Now, I'm not quite sure any of these are what I want, but in the past, I've made this a favorite. So CN4 seems to do the trick. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and let's see how it impacts the image. Okay, so this has actually done exactly what I was thinking in terms of the lighting and the method that I enjoy about the scene here. All right, so the next thing that I think I need to do to get my mind into the cinematic feel is to give this a cinematic crop. So I'm going to hit the letter C on my keyboard, and that brings up the crop tool. And movies, for those of you who are not familiar, they're shot, or at least they're presented in a 16:9 format in most cases. So I'm just going to go ahead and select 16:9, and I'm just going to go center crop on it, and I think that that's okay. In fact, yeah, I'll go 16:9 and just call it good. So we'll click there. And now I have this scene that looks like it's out of a movie. All right. And I think that that's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and maybe, let's turn off the vignette for a second, because that might be darkening it up a little too much. And again, this is where you have to start to tailor the preset to fit your narrative. All right. I don't think that it's doing enough with the color, and I really want the color to pop out. So we're going to go ahead and hit add filter, click on edit color. I'm going to grab the eye picker tool, and I'm going to click on this little green yellow look. And the edit color filter is a great way to do very minute changes to your images and to color in your image, I should say. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and push up on the saturation here. and I'm going to move the hue a little bit more towards green. And you can see how that's just barely changing the color. So I'm going to turn this off and then turn it back on. It's a very, very minor change. I may need to move this further to the green. Yeah, so now it's really starting to come through. Looking a little not quite natural, and that's okay. We're going to deal with that here in a little bit. And I'm going to make it a little bit brighter as well. So that way it really shows up in the image and also in YouTube compression. I may not do it as bright in the final version, but I do want to showcase kind of how this works. All right. We're going to take it like so. And then what I'd like to do after I get a good modification to the color, I just like to pull down on the opacity, because what I never want to do is take away from what was originally there. In most cases, I don't. Many times, I just want to enhance what was already there. So if I turn this off and turn it back on, you can see how it has changed the hue of that color, and I've also changed the luminance, but it's also pulling through some of those original tones and the original colors. So I do enjoy that look right there. So the last thing that I'll probably do is just throw a glow on this, and I think that that will set this off just the way that I envision it in my mind. I'm going to go ahead and just pull the amount up quite a bit and let that just wreak havoc all over the image. And I think that that's okay. Now, one of the things that you may want to do with your glow is apply it to just the brightest areas. And where I like to do that is by clicking on the 3-layer menu over here on the glow filter, clicking this, and then at the very bottom, it allows you to select blending. All right. Now, depending on how you have ON1 set up, you may have the floating properties menu, and essentially that my properties menu is right here. This is, I just nested it in the right pane. But if yours is just floating around, then you would just be able to click on blending as well. And I could easily have just selected this and clicked on blending. The reason why I use the 3-line menu is because I want to make sure that I have the blending mode for the glow filter selected. And so this just jumps me right to it. And then I can hover over here. And then what I can do is come to the color range, and I can just select highlights. And now it's going to apply this glow to just the highlights in my image as opposed to the entire image. And I also have this range slider where I can pull it to the left to obviously reduce it, and I can pull it to the right to increase what I think are the highlights. Now, I only really want this in the brightest areas of the image overall. And so I'll leave it like so for now. And then I'm going to turn this off, and I'm also going to turn it back on. And I may need to change the blend mode from soft light to lighten to give it a little bit more of a pump. There we go. So I need to increase the halos, and this is really just softening those areas, but giving it a little bit of context. I can see it. It may not be coming through on the compression, but it's a very, very subtle adjustment. So let me come over here and push up on the range. It's going to impact more. You can see how things got darker around this area, but the brightest areas are actually getting impacted. So if I turn it off and then turn it back on, yeah, it's a very subtle adjustment, but I promise it's there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the beginning. This is what we came into ON1 with, and after a few edits, this is where we have ended. Now, this is not one of those edits where I'm like, hey, this is the greatest thing ever. This is me practicing an idea, and I encourage everyone to practice an idea. So when you get to a photo where you're inspired to do something, you at least know what tools you're looking for in order to accomplish that look. And that's all this was. It wasn't a image where I'm like, this is going in my portfolio. This is just one of those things where I said, you know what? This would be really cool if I could make it look a little bit more cinematic. So going from something like this to something like this, I think goes a long way. Now, of course, if I feel like the overall effect that I've applied to the image is just way too strong, I can just pull down on the opacity of the entire layer stack, or effect stack, I should say, and I can get back some of that original look. And I could add a new LUT in here. I could do all kinds of things. So the sky is really your limit, in based off of your imagination and what you want to be creative with inside of ON1. And that's why I really enjoy working in this software. So hopefully you found some value in today's video. If you did, please hit that like button and leave a comment if you got questions about the editing technique or any editing techniques. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about ON1 Photo Raw, consider signing up for a training call with me. There's a link in the description box that'll take you to my calendar, and you can sign up for that. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money when you shop over at the ON1 store, consider using my coupon code FreeWillPhotos20. Every time someone uses that coupon, I do make a small commission, but that's at no extra charge to you, and I greatly appreciate it. Until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.